Welcome in 2-for-1 Drafts. Austin Gayle here with Mike Renner, live from Indianapolis for the 2020 NFL Scouting Combine. We're going to do a little short intro because we've talked to a ton of people today. We had Brady Quinn on the podcast. That was fantastic. Notre Dame alums just chatting it up. I'm over on the outside looking in, bringing up Bookstore, which is apparently a basketball tournament. I'm like, dude, I got nothing here. San Diego State, baby. Represent West Coast. But after Brady Quinn, we also talked to PFF's own Kevin Cole, but who's fantastic. Close. But, Kevin Cole was awesome, too. Talked about his analysis of the Combine, what matters here, what doesn't. Fun fact, not a lot matters here, but he did offer some great insight. Kevin Cole does a lot of great work.
The things that get glorified, the 40.
Yeah.
The guy looking the part don't matter as much as maybe the on-field did.
Yeah,
it should.
I agree. Kev Cole's great. And then thirdly, we're going to add in Danny Kelly from The Ringer, who did an awesome draft guide. I encourage you to check that out from The Ringer. He had some hot takes on Brian.
Only 50 players, though.
Yeah, only 50 players. He's still getting there. He's scratching the surface, but he had Brian Edwards in his top 50. We ripped him a little bit for that. He's lower a bit on Laviska Shenault, lower a bit on Josh Jones. I think he had some good analysis, so good takes.
I need to go back and watch Brian Edwards with these guys. Really hyping him up.
You do. You really do.
Good deal of him. Did not care for the 18 tape. Watched more in 19. Didn't change he looked about the same guy that I saw, so maybe I'll go back and dig a little deeper. We'll see.
And I think with Brian Edwards, too, he didn't participate in the Senior Bowl due to injury. He's not going to participate in the Combine due to injury. He's not having a ton of opportunities to elevate his stock. And if you go back to his tape, Danny Kelly's saying, I like his tape, these things, but there's not a lot I loved about what Brian Edwards did. Close to 50% of his production was on screens. He's just an interesting player, but it's great to talk to these people. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into these interviews, and we'll be back soon.
What's up? We're here at the Combine with none other than Brady Quinn, former Notre Dame superstar.
Been waiting a long time for this.
Yes.
Waiting a long time
Fellow
for this.
Domers.
My Domer.
Fellow Domer at the Combine, where he put up a legendary 24 reps on the bench back in the day.
How stupid that was?
Dude.
Yes.
It was so stupid. So you're assigned a scout with each group, right?
Yeah.
And the scout we were assigned was a Denver scout. Mm-hmm. And so the year before, Jay Cutler had benched. And no one in our group was benching. And so how it works is you take your entire group up, you literally walk up, I'm so-and-so, I'm not benching. And sometimes they'll ask why and just say, whatever reason you want. Yeah, well, I'm a quarterback or I have a shoulder or I don't want to, whatever. So there might have been one other guy in another group, I think that was doing it as far as for the quarterbacks, but it was pretty much no. And then finally the guy goes, dude, I'm telling you, you can break Jay Cutler's record, what he did. And I hadn't been really training for it, any of that stuff, but I wasn't doing anything else at the Combine, just interviewing, medical, and all that. And I was like, screw it. I think I called my agent first, and I called Coach Weiss first. Mm-hmm. And I was represented by Tom Conn at the time, so Tom's like, "Oh, Brad, it's probably not a good idea. You could blow a pec out, or you
blow a pec out. Bruce Gradkowski blew a pec out doing bench. Yeah.
It's a legitimate concern, right? Like if you're smart, you don't do it. So then I call.
Here we go.
Thanks for putting Notre Dame.
Can I cuss on this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. Light it up.
So then I call Coach Weiss. And I was like, "Hey, Coach." He's like, "Hey, what are you doing? Why are you calling me?" He's like, "Oh," I was like, "Well, I'm at the Combine, and I'm thinking about benching." He's like, "You dumb motherfucker!" And he's just like, for a smart kid, you can be pretty stupid sometimes. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, kind of figured I was gonna get that. Hang up. I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." I was like, let's just go right in. So warmed up, did as best I could. I think I got 24.
Yeah.
Probably could have got.
I was saying,
if I had a crowd, I bet I could have got 25. That would get me all amped up.
Yeah, that would be pretty sweet. And the music blaring like it kind of is today. But
well, not this music, but yeah.
Oh, this music's pretty garbage.
But by the way, the dumbest thing I ever did. And then after I got done, they took me up. I had to go on NFL. I think we had to do the Wonderlic right after that. Yeah. My hands were shaking.
Oh man.
What's that?
What'd you get on the Wonderlic?
I played 29 or some shit.
That's respectful.
So I couldn't get my fingers. I was so amped up.
Oh man.
I was trying to pull apart the part because it's there's an adhesive on it, right, to peel it. And I literally was open up oh fuck, page 1 and 2 are stuck together. So I was like, oh, this is a time test. Yeah. So I'm trying to use my pencil to rip it through. I was like, I should get a point at least for this.
Yeah. Did teams bring up why did you bench? Were they bringing that up or what?
Well, and I went on NFL Network and so the funny thing is when I went to meet with the Redskins. Joe Gibbs is there, and I'm telling him the story. And Joe Gibbs is really devout in his faith, and I verbatim said what Charlie Weiss said, using some of the language. He's taken back by it. Then I get a call after I'm done with the Combine. The Redskins want to fly me in. Dan Snyder basically brought me in just to sit in his office and tell him that story, and that was it. And it's talking about Notre Dame. And I was like, they had They had the quarterback out of Auburn, Jason Campbell, and then Mark Brunell was there. Like I was like, they're not drafting me. Like this is just.
They just got
just for fun. Yeah. That sounds nice.
How many times you told that to like girls at bars you had 24 reps?
I never tell anyone.
I was gonna say you could probably tell.
I'm married now.
You wear a tight enough shirt.
I have 3 daughters. We just had a daughter 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
so
congratulations!
My life is drastically different than you, Renner.
You should have heard how often Mike Renner brings up he was on The Bachelor. It's literally nonstop.
Okay. That's
nonstop. The week after,
I got asked to
I get people bring it up for me.
I got asked to be on The Bachelorette once.
Yeah. And
Boardwalk in Hermosa Beach.
Okay, that's the way I scout. Yeah.
Right. So a girl comes up, asks me. I was like, actually, I'm married. Well, I think I was engaged at the time.
Okay.
I was engaged at the time. And she's like, oh, that's not a problem. We can work around that. I'm like,
what?
What?
We can work around that.
Okay. I was like, I'm out. Like, just don't talk to me.
Notre Dame alums, Bachelor close. I mean, should I even be on this podcast? I kind of suck for this. It's like, dude, I got nothing to the table right now.
When did the analytics come involved? That's why we start crunching numbers.
We'll get to start. Right? We'll get to your quarterback rankings. We're going to ask you to rank the quarterback analysts, but I want to go to the combine a little bit more as well, like the behind the scenes part that we don't get to see that they asking you in those interviews. What are they asking quarterbacks? What did they ask you back in the day?
Yeah, I mean, so sometimes they're intense. Gary Kubiak at the time was the head coach of the Texans, and we're literally sitting private about a table about this wide. And if the camera's there, he was like leaning up across it and looking at me, and he was like, "Are you ready to take over an NFL franchise?
Yeah.
And lead men, guys who've got families, got to put food on the table and all this stuff." And I just looked at him. I said, "What do you think I've been doing for the past 4 years?"
Hell yeah.
And I was just like that's. You think it's any different in college? I said, we had a coach get fired. Tyron Willingham got fired. Like that's who I went to play for. I was like, I understand the ramifications that come with this position and everything else. And I was like, and we had a new coach come in and we flourished. So I said, you have those sorts of conversations at times because they want to test you to see how you respond. Jason Garrett and I sat down. I forget if the meetings were like 15 or 20 minutes at that time, but we literally sat down to get a dry erase board. He would draw up a play, explain it to me, install it, and then just give it back and he'd erase it. He goes like, all right, explain it back to me. And then he'd ask me some questions about it. Okay. We went back and forth like that for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then he'd be like, okay, give me your favorite third down play, favorite red zone play, and then talk me through what do you do with this, what do you do with this, what do you do with this. Burnt, horn, that was it. I was just shook his hand, left. And he was the OC in Dallas at the time, but it was like
you ever get anything wrong? Like you missed anyone of them?
No, not that. I mean, that was that plays to my strengths. Like that was more of like stuff I was comfortable with, and I mean, I could topper smash wheel was gun F right 72 topper smash wheel was my favorite red zone play for Charlie's. Yeah, it's like
how often do you say that at bars? I mean,
no, never. Here's the thing: is I hear guys do it on TV, and I'm just like, oh,
dude, Bruce does that in the office like every day. Like Bruce Cassidy would come in the office like, you guys want to hear my favorite play? Like Bruce, you just told us this play.
And the problem with my career was I moved around enough where I had West Coast, I had Charlie's system, the Patriots kind of system, and then I had the 3-digit and then different variations. So, then like Brian Dable, basically when he got to Cleveland, he like completely like meshed his system, the 3-digit, and then Patriots to like be his own. And so like I've been introduced to so many. It was just like, yeah, it's all the same stuff. You just call it something different.
Who was the best player? Who's your best teammate on those old Notre Dame squads?
As far as like talented, I mean Samardzija. It's hard not to,
What would he have been in the NFL? Goes to baseball.
I don't know. I don't know.
Would he have been a first-round pick?
He would have been successful whatever he did. Yeah. Like, I honestly feel like he could have played like basketball too.
Yeah.
Like we crushed Bookstore. He came in, had to fill in a couple times for us.
Bookstore basketball is a tournament. Notre Dame.
One twice.
5-on-5 outdoor tournament.
I'm on the outside looking in here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You won twice.
Won twice. We never lost. We actually were in the semis one year. It snowed during the spring game. And so Raymond McKnight played on the other team that we were playing against. We're like, hey, we're not going to show up. Let's play at 2 tomorrow. We'll tell both. We'll just postpone it, and then obviously the winner will have to play in the championship game right after. Well, I think they had 3 students who were on their team. They fielded like 2 more people, made 5, and like said we disqualified or we forfeited. That sucked. Because after the spring game, everyone goes out and parties, right? It's like a great time. And so I remember like getting a call like late that night from someone within the Bookstore basketball tournament. They're like, yeah, you guys had to forfeit. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah, well, smash. You were pretty frustrated and probably drunk at that point.
I got to the semis once. Lost to the semis, the team that won. We had 5 guys all under 6 foot, or all 6 foot and under. It was that's not a team built to win outdoor basketball.
No, you can't shoot.
It's all ones.
It's all ones.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right, let's get to a little more football.
Let's get to the quarterback takes.
Yes. I want to get to the quarterback personality takes.
Oh, okay.
There's a lot of QB analysts out there, and the first time I ever talked to Brady online was when Dan Orlovsky, talking about Dan Orlovsky establishing the run.
Positive or negative?
But let's hear your top 5 like QB analysts out there. Let's power rank them real quick.
Oh, man. You're
catching me off guard.
You're catching me off guard with this. I don't even know.
We'll go top 3.
I don't know how to categorize them all because, like, who do you consider a quarterback?
Who's good?
Guy?
I'm saying who's a guy who played quarterback.
Who played quarterback
Yes,
as an
like a
analyst?
quarterback
I do
analyst.
think Dan does a great job. If you're talking about like game stuff, I love Blackledge. I love Herb Street. Like those are like college level guys that
Herb
I love.
Street's
Obviously, love
fantastic.
Aikman. Aikman he's awesome from the standpoint of from a football. You can have those conversations with him, but even from like a TV standpoint, he's good to talk to about like working you through. Like he's been helpful to me. It's been helpful to Joel Klatt, other guys who are with the Fox Network. I've really enjoyed both them. Man, you're kind of putting me in a spot. I do love listening to Chris.
Okay.
Chris and Al to me are like they're in the position they're in because they're the easiest listen. So
they're like America's uncles.
right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that what you call them?
Yeah.
Is your Uncle Chris?
I've never heard that before. I guess
No,
that's what we call them.
I love listening to them. They're really easy to listen to. I think he does a tremendous job. Those are kind of some of the guys that come to my first. I'm sure I'm leaving out some people, but
So you're just like Leinart stinks is what you're saying?
no, I wouldn't. Matt does a good job.
I know he does.
Well, and I was probably talking more game guys because I think game guys you have to go more in depth.
Yeah.
Like from switching over from games to studio this year, like you're instead of digging a mile deep, an inch wide, when you're like really preparing for a game and like getting to know these teams, you're now digging an inch down, mile wide, and it's a lot different as far as how you look at it.
I thought Urban was great this year. Do you think he's going back into coaching, Urban Meyer?
Well, it'll probably be a year-by-year thing, and it's to his credit because he was so good at building winning cultures and being able to do all that. I honestly couldn't answer that, but I hope I have to answer that question for a long time because that obviously means he's with us and he's doing a good job.
Dude, he was good. But
What's your take on Tony Romo? We skipped over that, but I mean, this guy's had huge ascent. I know Chris has given him a ton of praise for the work he's done in the booth. What's your take on him in the booth?
Yeah, I think he's been able to transition in and do a good job. There are some formality things that it's not how I like to call games or listen to games. I think when you talk so close up to the snap, and they call it first guessing when you're predicting what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you anytime if I talk up to the snap if someone's going to blitz or not.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. But I do think he really does provide insight of what the quarterback's thinking, what the coach is thinking, kind of talking about the situations and all that. And there is a lot of value there. There's a lot of realness. The way he handles it, too, is kind of like a fan of the game. It's something that people didn't really tap into because I think they were coached not to.
Yeah.
And he's fed into this, and people like it. So, in that way, he's really done a good job for himself. It'll be interesting to see if he stays with CBS, though, or goes to ESPN.
Let's jump to this quarterback class.
Yes.
I kind of want to start with Joe Burrow. I'm sure you've talked about him ad nauseum, as have we. Being in Cincinnati, I feel like I bring that guy up every day. But with Joe Burrow, how do you view him in this class? What are his strengths? Like, give us what your take is right now on Joe Burrow.
So, he's the best quarterback in this class. This is the best single season. I could, no offense to your grades, he had the best season I've ever seen of any college football player ever. Like top to bottom. I don't really feel like he ever had a bad game.
Our grades match that. Our grades match that.
If you're the Bengals, you have to take him. Yeah. Like I don't care who it was, whether the Bengals or anyone else. Even if you're a team that had a quarterback and you're drafting number 1 overall, still you felt good about, you'd have to contemplate taking him based on what he put on film. One of the things I was curious, and I keep trying to dig back into, is why such a big jump, right? Like I had a jump for my sophomore and junior year, but not like that big of a jump. Like he had this year. So I went back and watched more, and one of the things in talking to him was he got to LSU so late when he transferred that he said it was like, look, it's a slow process, and I was still catching on. And, one of the things was we had a lot more 6-7 man protection, so you had less guys out on the routes. And that was what the biggest difference you saw this year. 80% of the time they were probably, five wide?
Yeah.
And when you do that, obviously there's more options, but he's so cerebral. He has such a feel for all of that it played to his strengths, the strengths of what they had and everything else. So I started to feel even more and more confident just about like where he was in 2018, the second half of the season, and then looking at what Joe Brady brought and how that group just all matured together to create what was just a phenomenal season.
I was going to say, did you ever get on a field at a time where you thought, like Burrow there, where like maybe you didn't have a great handle on the playbook, didn't have a good feel for what plays or the offense you were in, whether it was in college or in the NFL?
No, in the NFL for sure. I mean, I think early on in college it was more about, like I always say,
just adjusting to the speed.
There's 3 years of playing quarterback, right? Your first year is you're really like mastering what you do, and it's learning that, right? So you're not thinking out there. Everything just kind of comes to you. You see it, you respond. Second year is really understanding what everyone's trying to take away from you, applying what you've already mastered to that. And in your third year, you let it loose. Like anyone would tell you, you really need 3 years of playing to fully evaluate, and then in that third year of playing, to then say, okay, he's got the offense down, he's got the defense down. How is he playing? Like how is all that working out around him? That's ideally what you'd like to do to evaluate a quarterback. So I would say early on in my career at Notre Dame, obviously felt much better my second year as a quarterback than I did my first year. and then continued to progress. But even my second year in Charlie Weiss's system, part of the reason why I wanted to come back was because I was like, all right, we could have a chance to win a national championship, and I want to see what we can do within this offense again. It's not like I'm coming back and not continuing to grow in an NFL offense. The first playbook I got was New England's. So there was value, and there was value in degree and all that stuff. The NFL for sure. I mean, I new system as and didn't play really much till week 17 my rookie year, and so the next year, my second year in the league, was probably the best I ever felt about an offense because I had an off season and I had 2 years to be in that offense. From that point moving forward, there was always changes either from a team or from the offense I was running, and it's tough, man. It's tough because the longer you start playing, the more you get words that like. There's a read screen, there's a read a call, there's all these different calls you make, and they start to overlap, and you're like, in the heat of the battle, there's just a lot of crossover, especially when you start getting hit a little bit. And things get a little fuzzy. You're like, I can't remember if that was last year or this year, but we'll try to make it work.
And that gets brought up in the NFL with like college, quarterback evaluation, saying like it's a new system. He has 3 offense coordinators in 4 years, whatever it may be. But I think with Joe Brady, to go back to what you said about Joe Burrow, I think a lot of the credit should also go to Joe Brady in that he evaluated Joe Burrow, understood his strengths, pivoted the offense to do more 5-man protections, and elevated Joe Burrow's game.
Well, also I was going to say that brings up Jordan Love and how he goes to a different scheme, and all of a sudden it goes in the tank.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and what was around him, too. I think that played a factor. But he's going to be the most interesting one because, like, when you compare him to Herbert, when I watched Jordan Love play, I'm like, okay, he's playing the position. Like, he's a little more fluid and more smooth in some of the things he does fundamentally. When I watch Herbert, everything feels like it's mechanical. Everything feels like he's like thinking his way through it, and it's just not natural.
No,
and
it's very
and like and by the way, you do a tremendous job with your draft guide and all this stuff. I've been saying for a long time though, he does remind me of Tannehill. Yeah, like when I was with the Dolphins in 2014 in training camp, and I would watch Ryan drop back and move and everything. And granted, we had a new offense. Bill Lazor was the OC then, so he probably was still thinking through some of that system. You felt like that. You felt like he was like still trying to get down the position or get down the footwork because that's what it is. Like, especially in the NFL, it's so much about anticipation and your rhythm and your feet and how you tie it into the routes and the concept that you're trying to get down the drops and the feel of that play so you have that internal clock in your head. Like everything works in unison. And that's why, like, when you see guys like that when they're in a new offense and you're like, man, it looks like he's struggling to progress or process. That's what it is. He's still getting a feel for the rhythm of the offense.
But does that get fixed? Like, does that get fixed?
I mean, Herbert's played so much at this point. It's hard to think it's going to change much. Yeah. The only thing I would say in his defense is he checks a lot of boxes off outside of that. It's just if he's in a system that I think incorporates him more running the football, sometimes that helps a little bit. I really didn't like their offensive system the entire time he was there.
We've said that a ton with Justin Herbert. Like a role like similar to what the Buffalo Bills did a little bit with Josh Allen and involving him in the run game would be huge. And I think he's going to test well. Like Justin Herbert is going to test well. You're going to show that he has athleticism and speed to where you involve him in a rushing offense. Like you're going to get more value than if you did like a standard offense.
And he's got a strong arm. Like
that's the weird thing. It's like strong arm and accuracy. Usually if you have both those things.
The confidence isn't there. And
but
I think
he doesn't have that two ball. He doesn't have the touch. Like so in the NFL, you've got to be able to throw over a defender and then before the next one, right? And sometimes that's being able to articulate your arm to really snap it off and almost like you
nice
guys
there. I like that.
You guys golf, right?
Yeah.
So if when you're punching a golf shot, right, you kind of got to stay low through it, and right, you're going to club up, but then you're not going to take a full swing. It's kind of like that in throwing. There's like a feel to it, and you can rep it and practice it, but like he struggles to find that. He really has to wait till guys get into windows. He has a hard time being able to feather that ball in.
So, how highly would you draft? You're in need of a quarterback, desperate. How highly would you take Justin Herbert?
Man,
and Jordan Love.
I think I'd be more. It depends on the situation that I have with both because I think they both need developed. Like I think ideally, if Jordan Love is like this year's closest thing to like a guy like Patrick Mahomes, which I'm not saying there's any comp from.
It sounds like you're saying he's Patrick Mahomes here.
I know you like player comps, so I guess Jordan Love, Patrick Mahomes.
I'm not saying there's a relation there, but I think there is like
feel.
Like Mahomes was like, oh, he's not a winner because he didn't win enough, or it's an air raid system, or whatever excuse you want to make for everyone not seeing that he was by far and away the best in that class and what he is. There's some of that with like Love where you're like, all right, could we be missing out on like a guy that has those tools that just needs to be in the right situation?
Yeah.
So who's the quarterback that's there? Is it Miami? And do I have a Ryan Fitzpatrick who'd be a great mentor and can start for a while before he goes in?
Ideal. Everything's ideal for whatever quarterback. How like Vac? I guess that's obviously his own scenario, but like what range of picks? Where were you?
I mean,
Take a
I
guy
still
top
think
5.
you still take Herbert top 10.
Okay, Herbert top 10.
Love, I think you take in the top 32.
Okay, somewhere.
Because the film is what his play at the end of games like Wake, where really the pick he threw wasn't. I knew what he was trying to do. He should have taken the flat. He tried to get it over top into the tight end behind. The linebacker made a nice play. The drive should have ended before that. He threw a terrible one, double coverage that got dropped. So
that was rough.
And that's to start it off, right? And then, by the way, that pick that he threw, and eventually they're in field goal range. They could have kicked tied and went into overtime. So it's the decision making in those clutch spots that I think people are going to have a hard time.
I was going to say his second half grade was like awful for us. His first half grade was like in the 80s, and the second half grade was like 50 something. Like,
I kind of want to
fell apart.
I kind of want to go back to something we're kind of referencing, but like with quarterback play, can it get fixed with Justin Herbert being unnatural? But what do you think can get fixed at the next level? I think that's such an important part of the process when you are evaluating quarterbacks. Are there certain things that where you see their cons in college that you think can get fixed at the next level?
Yeah, I mean, I think for like Jordan Love, there's times when he can throw off balance or like from awkward arm angles. He doesn't need to, and sometimes he would rely on it, or maybe you could just call it being lazy. Like those things you can clean up.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen it within Cam Newton. When North Turner got there, he really worked on his footwork because he was a guy that he would basically turn parallel line of scrimmage, and he's so gifted and strong that he could just throw with his hips open, and he got away with it his MVP season. But then when you keep doing that, like eventually you're going to be inaccurate. Eventually it's not going to work. And you started to see that. North cleaned that up. He had a better statistical year, at least, looking at some of the numbers. Some of the shorter passing game you could throw in there. With
it was a little more
McCaffrey.
accurate. Yeah, definitely more accurate.
But you can clean some of that stuff up. With Herbert, I think it's more about a system fit and then trying to play to his strengths. And
culture fit too, probably. I mean, he's got to come in, find that way to be natural, find that way to be confident.
Say a lot of people think he's like.
Yeah, but here's the problem with that when they're like, oh, he's not as boisterous or he's not as, he doesn't fight. Some people are like, oh, does he have fire to him?
Yeah.
Here's the thing: is if you're in an NFL locker room and you try to be someone you're not, people see right through that. And like coaches when try to players, it's like if it's not genuine, they'll see it's fake and it doesn't work. So like he still has to be himself.
Mm-hmm. I think the bench press is starting behind us right now. I know you're getting a little excited to get on there. I don't know if
how much can you put him nowadays?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Gosh, not much. Not much. I think every once in a while I do like a rep of 315 just to feel like I can still do it.
Again? Yeah.
Well, I do have 3 little girls, so at some point I'm gonna have to get on like HGH and really start getting after it.
I respect that. I respect that. I know
Renner
Renner
had that midlife crisis.
I've got a tremendous gun collection, so I'm good. I have to get like a gun case, a gun rack.
Oh yeah.
That I put out in front of the front door.
Yeah.
Wow, manly.
Right over your
in
bed.
front of everybody.
I think that's like a Varsity Blues reference. Right?
It is. I think that is. Yeah. Good take there. I know Renner wanted before we
Wayne's
dropped
World,
off the pod here.
Yeah.
We need a Notre Dame highlight story. Give us a good story from the college days. Whether on field, off field, I need to hear something good from Notre Dame.
Oh gosh. How about this? So my senior year, we played UCLA. Should have beat them by more than what we did. We had a bad day, but people don't realize I think we had a full pad of practice the day before that. Like it was a breaking point in that season for us.
Man.
Not good. Like we are not in a good spot as a team. Not in a good spot with how things were going, and based on how the first half of that game went, like guys were frustrated. Like had we not like come back and won that game, then kind of gone on a streak of wins because we ended up getting the 10 wins. You don't know how that would have like turned out the rest of the season. Like that was like that played us some hard. Like people do not understand like how much that changed. Kind of just us even getting to another BCS game. That was an interesting year, our senior year being there. Because we had lost sort of to Michigan, we kind of felt like, all right, everything
kind of ruined the hype. Yeah,
it just crushed it, and you're like, all right, we got to be perfect the rest of the way, and then hope once Michigan loses, if they lose to Ohio State, like maybe we get in when we play Ohio State again, or maybe we have a shot. So that was the toughest part. But yeah, it got a little dicey. So like that drive was important for like more than just that reason. It was important for us to get back to a BCS game, get a little more money for the school and all that.
Let's talk some Notre Dame prospects because
Okay.
they got a ton of guys here. Anyone? I remember you said you didn't really like the safeties coming out, but any of these guys? So Julian Akbar, Khalid Kareem, Jalen Elliott, Alohi Gilman, Troy Pride, Claypool, Komet. Any of them?
Well, I like all the guys. They're good
I'm
kids,
saying like any
but-
guys like you really
James.
are like this guy. I think like the NFL's kind of sleeping on him, or I think they're going to be studs. In the league.
Cole, or at least I would say the media is sleeping on Cole. People are like, oh, these guys aren't, there's not a first round tight end in this. I'm like, Cole's gonna be taken, I think, in late the first round.
Really?
There was a lot of people too that are betting on his upside because he's played baseball that he hasn't really fully devoted himself to football. And you talk to some scouts and they'll tell you like they feel like his frame could handle like 265 and he can still move. 270 maybe.
Yeah.
So
Damn.
you
Big
just
ass tight end.
right. And here's the thing is everyone's all about the pass game, the flexing, and all that, but you still do have like those traditional Ys that have to put their foot in the ground or hand in the ground, and then be a part of the run blocking, releasing and play action, all that stuff. So he to me is very much could be a first round pick. Looking at Akwara.
Yeah, we think of Akwara because we love Akwara. I mean,
I love everything about him. I wish he wouldn't have got hurt. I think he was really like coming to a good point in the season for him, like building that momentum. And I think like there's such a drop off from Chase Young and everyone else that I don't know how to evaluate him amongst some of the other edge guys. And so I think he could be a first round guy. It's going to depend upon how some things go the rest of the way for him. But he comes from his brother, balling out right now too. He was kind of a late bloomer, right?
Yeah.
Wasn't he undrafted, I believe?
he was. He won UDFA.
And now look who he's doing for the Lions.
Yeah.
So I think look, these guys, whether or not you guys believe it, like these guys believe in that stuff. Like they'll look at him and say, maybe he's a little bit of a late bloomer too. There's a lot of upside there. So those guys in particular, I know Troy Pride had a great Senior Bowl week and all that stuff as far as coverage goes. People talk about concern with tackling. I mean, you could make the same concern with C.J. Henderson.
Yeah.
And so, but like,
Where would you take Pride,
league.
you think? What kind of?
He's going to run well, he'll test pretty well. Probably third.
Okay.
What's your opinion of, if we take it back a little bit, last year's Notre Dame rookie class, Miles Boykin, Jerry Tillery,
Let's talk Jerry Tillery.
Drew Chanquill. Like,
What'd you say?
Let's talk Jerry Tillery because we were super high on Tillery, and he is not good last year.
He struggled last year. He really struggled last year.
You guys any inside info on Jerry?
Is that a good scheme fit for him? I just say this. I mean, part of the thing is you get in these different defensive schemes, and I think if Jerry Tillery's in like Seattle system, right? One gap, pure penetration, like probably a better system for him. Like people will tie back Gus Bradley, and they'll be like, "Oh, it's the same system." It's not. It's really not. Like there's gonna be times where he has some more two gap responsibility. I think one of the toughest things for him is in the NFL, especially at that position. He's a tall, long guy.
Yeah, he's not that like big. He's like 290 at 6'6", which isn't like big for a DT.
No, so you either got to be able to move people or you got to be able to be twitchy.
Yeah,
and I think he's somewhere like tweening right now. You know?
That's a good call.
He reminds me a little bit of like Tyson Jackson back when we played him versus LSU. I think he was a first round, maybe second round pick. I think the Chiefs. But
he's
he
like
got
a number 3 overall pick actually.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay. But he got to put like a 5 tech and a 3-4, and that's back when we had more base personnel. And you're like, dude, he was really good at LSU, and then he gets lost into like two gapping at times and just kind of being in no man's land. I think that transition might take him a little while to figure out.
That's another thing too that I think does get discussed at times in this evaluation process, but scheme matters. Like what you're asking this player to do at the next level is going to be so important. Especially we talk about that all the time with like cornerbacks, like coming into a man-heavy scheme, cover 3 heavy scheme. Like it's not going to work. Like there are rarely that you find these players that can play at a high level regardless of the scheme. And I think Tillery is exactly that. Like Tillery, you ask him to 2-gap, he's not going to be the same guy when you get him to 1-gap and more twitchy stuff at the top.
The one good thing about at least coaches now, I think offenses is they are trying to be more flexible to like what the strengths are of their personnel, which is nice. I mean, it's good to see that from an offensive perspective. I think the defense is still stuck a little bit in their ways of basically trying to say, look, this is the scheme we run. This is what we're going to do. Or this is how we like our corners to play. This is what we're going to do. It's like, I mean, is that really how you get the most out of your players just because you feel comfortable with that as a defensive coordinator? I mean, I think it's one of the reasons, too, you see a lot of defensive coordinators are older.
Yeah.
You know, like the Carolina Panthers are willing to take a shot on Joe Brady.
Like, I was say, like, there's not innovation on defense.
No, and it's like how many young defensive coordinators are getting their shot in that way too? Yeah. Where they're saying like this guy's innovative or there's something to him, right? You just don't see it.
What about Jim Leonard, Wisconsin, right? I mean, they took a shot on him. I mean, he's not in the NFL, but I mean,
Wisconsin guy.
Yeah, true.
I'm talking about the NFL. The NFL takes a shot.
No, I agree. No, I agree. The defense coordinators are older.
Yeah. Well, Brady, really appreciate everything. Can we get you to say now I'm done with the EAS back in the day?
Now I'm done.
Oh, yeah. All right, now we're done. Thank you, Brady.
No, appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man.
Look at this guy.
All right, sitting down with Kev Cole. I call you Kev Cole. I know your full name's Kevin, but I really like Kev Cole. It's got a ring to it. But you're PFF analyst with us. You also work on the research and development team with George Tillery, our director of research and development. We're really happy to have you on.
Happy to be here. Yeah, I'll take all different variations, permutations.
What do you usually go by? What, like, if you had to pick
Kev?
one, though?
Is it Kev Cole, KC?
I think it depends on the group. Like, you have different groups. So I think Kev Cole, K Cole.
Ooh.
That's your rap name.
Growing up, I got the nickname Worm for a while. I'm not sure why exactly. I think it was when I used to play basketball a lot when I was younger. Yeah, no rebounding was involved in that, though. I like to kind of hang out at the 3-point line.
Yeah.
All right, Worm. Let's get into the background here. Beyond the names.
That was the background. This is the important stuff.
How did you start doing what you're doing now, working in research and development, also creating content? Really, I think you do create a lot of great content, both for the fantasy football side of things and also for PFF, doing a lot of combine analysis recently, draft prospect analysis, what you've done with the Bayesian grade. I mean, you're going deep. A lot of what you do for PFF, you're going deep here, Worm. But talk to us how you started here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go too far into the past, but I'd done some finance work. It was quantitative, although not at the level that we're talking about here. I wasn't a stats or a CS guy, but then I started to learn these things really through fantasy football. Was the entree into doing it. Learned a couple programming languages, started to do more content, got a job at Roto Grinders doing DFS stuff. So now they kind of naturally lent into this. But football has really been the thing that I've concentrated on the most, and it's my favorite sport, all that stuff. So this is perfect for me.
You do a ton of things, and I feel like this may be a little bit of a hard question, but what do you like doing? What do you really like doing, putting your mind to and working on? Because I feel like you have a lot of range. You want to talk about range. Worm's got range, and I think I want to see where do you actually really like doing it?
Well, I mean, more than anything, I like just coming. I mean, just whenever an idea hits you, a lot of times whatever narrative is going through. The zeitgeist, you could say, of what's going on right there. It's just attacking it and looking at it and breaking down some numbers about it. I think that's the best thing. And when you can kind of come from A to Z, from ideation to fruition, all within like a 24-hour period and do something, that's great. I mean, I like the longer research stuff too, don't get me wrong, and building off of that type of stuff, like the stuff for the Combine that we're going to talk about. Obviously, you know that's coming. That's on the calendar. You're getting ready for it. But I also like it when just something comes across the timeline that you feel like you're annoyed enough about that you wanna dig into it and kind of push back against what you're seeing.
I want to dig into now your Combine stuff because it's very interesting. This is, if you're going to read any article about the Combine, read his articles about the most important drills here in India for offensive and defensive players.
And that's on PFF.com. Get to PFF.com.
Very just like takeaways that are, I mean, like a lot of people know, but putting actual numbers to some of these takeaways, position by position. One I want to start with is height does not matter for quarterbacks, you found, in terms of actually projecting success and sort of success in the NFL. Yeah,
I mean, what I did for the analysis, just to give a brief overview, is just kind of looking at how important these different attributes, whether it's the measurements, the drills are for the draft, and then looking separately at our metric for value WAR, the wins above replacement that we have. So trying to separate, how well someone's drafted, how much they're going up, their stock is going up there versus how well they're actually going to produce once they get into the NFL. So yes, for the quarterbacks, obviously we've had this height question forever. I guess hand size, maybe I should have dug into that. That's become another thing where it was like height doesn't matter, hand size matters because of guys like Drew Brees and Russell Wilson and stuff. So, but what you found is that it doesn't really matter, and I think we've seen with some of these measures and some of the takeaways here and the data that I'm looking at from 2006 to 2017 is teams are getting smarter. I think they are listening to some of this stuff and some of the discussions that we had. I mean, the fact that we've had Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray. Are people really talking about the fact that Tua is 6 foot? I mean, a little bit, right?
But
not at all,
it's
really.
like the conversation is done.
Yeah,
basically.
So I think we're actually starting to get past it, but it's good to see the confirmation there in the numbers that it is something historically that has driven draft position a lot, but it hasn't driven WAR a lot. And if you figure, WAR is also a product of draft position in that the higher you're drafted, the more opportunity you have, so it's going to drive that too. So the fact that doesn't show up at all in WAR is really an indication that it was something that you shouldn't have been concentrating on. You should be concentrating on the stuff that we like to look at, the metrics and the actual tape.
On-field performance. Sorry.
I mean, speaking to teams getting smarter, here at the Combine, in addition to sending a lot of the content members of PFF, we send our B2B crew, guys that work with the NFL and NCAA teams. And talking to the guys last night, they said a team threw up PFF's draft guide on a PowerPoint presentation and looked through like what we're talking about, the data that we see with some of these players. I think teams are getting smarter, and I'm not trying to toot PFF's horn, but like they're using data, they're using analytics, they're using these things to try and draft better, make better decisions on the football field, etc. Beyond quarterback, let's stick on the offensive side of the ball. What do you see that like in the metrics for wide receiver, running back, some of these drills? What do you see that really translates to the next level?
The interesting thing that I thought was running back and wide receiver, so much draft position, so much heavily correlated to size and speed.
Yes.
Whereas you found running back agility drills far more important to actual success on the football field. And for wide receiver, there's really no like one predictor, but size and speed doesn't really matter at all.
Yeah, I think wide receiver's been something, and even research that I've done in the past for fantasy, where you find out that the athletic measurables don't matter that much. But I think I think teams are still making some pretty heavy mistakes as far as it's concerned. When you see someone run a great number, people are going to talk about it. You look
John
back.
Ross.
Yeah, you look at John Ross. You look at Rashad Perryman. Maybe before that, if you go all the way back to
Darius
Hayward-Bay. These guys. I mean, they still jump up just because it's alluring to think what they can potentially do for an offense when they have something like that. But what you find is that it's really more of a skill-based position than running back, where running back also is influenced by those things, but there is more of a correlation between what's happening in the drills and more for running back, because it's more of an athleticism-based position. I mean, you see guys step into a new offense and can produce, like Kenyon Drake came in and then was able to produce that week. You don't necessarily have to have the skill refined at the same sort of level. So going back to the agility drills, I mean, we look at the different facets that these players are in. So rushing the ball, receiving, and we see receiving is a lot more valuable because it's less replaceable in our minds. And agility is something naturally that's going to translate into receiving, and to be able to catch passes is something that's more of an agility skill than it is a pure speed and burst drill, which would be more correlated with running the ball.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the LSU running back, we talk about that all the time. He's agile. Might not have speed, though.
Yeah. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a back that I think could run maybe over 4.6. If he cracks 4.5s, it'd be a good time for him, but I think he is going to test well in the agility. Let's jump to the defensive side of the ball.
Sure.
Talk to us about some of the findings you had and what matters for these positions. Weight, I know, very important for interior defensive line. Yeah.
I mean, that was a big one, and I mentioned Aaron Donald in there as kind of being the guy that people will point to. People like to use outliers to justify. You could justify anything, right? By pointing to one. So if someone comes in light on their weight, they say, well, it doesn't matter because Aaron Donald weighed 285 pounds.
This literal alien on on Earth here is actually really good. This doesn't matter.
But if you look at other guys that are in that, even lighter range, we're talking about someone who's in 260s to less than 300. There are a lot of guys that we had as producing negative WAR, so below replacement value type of guys once they get into the NFL. Whereas on the higher side, maybe you're not going to get these home run type of Aaron Donald players, but you're going to get guys that are very useful. And let's face it, you can't really can't replace someone who has some agility at 340 pounds like you can replaceable some guy who's 260 pounds, and I think that's part of it.
All right, moving down the list here, let's talk more about the defensive side of the ball and other things that you see, like defensive backs. I think is another one where 40 and this speed feels like it makes a ton of sense and translates to the next level, something that's valuable here. But what did you see when you're kind of like looking at and projecting WAR at the next level with these? Yeah, I mean, I think this is another one where it's probably most analogous and it makes sense to wide receiver on the offensive side of the ball, where it's a skill-based position. There is a degree of athleticism that you have to have. It probably dictates what type of coverage you can have, but if utilized properly, being able to cover and really knowing how and really working at that craft can make up for a lot of those things. So speed is something that was heavily influencing draft position, but not nearly as much when we're talking about what's going on with WAR. Some's a little bit maybe of the broad jump or the vert, and it's another thing that people concentrate on. Agility is something that's somewhat there, but really it's just going to be, you don't want to see someone flunk maybe any of these tests, and you're really going to want to see the tape and see who you think has that skill. You're not a film grinder, I know that,
no.
But I mean, you're definitely a part of draft Twitter now. I think you have to be. If you're not, I'm welcoming you right now. Do you have any guys that through the data you looked at that you really like, or are you kind of waiting to see more? I don't know how much you've kind of looked at this class and found guys that you feel will project at a high level at the next rate.
Well, I mean, I probably concentrate more on the offensive side of the ball just because of the fantasy football background that I've had before. So, I mean, I think one of the interesting test cases that we have this year is when you have Judy and Ruggs and you're trying to figure out, what are we going to do with these two guys on the same team? Because this is a situation where probably Michael Thomas to a degree when he was playing with Devin Smith. You had Beckham and Landry playing together, where a lot of the traditional metrics you're going to look at, it's almost impossible to pop on a yards per route run or to pop on a market share when you have another guy next to you who's going to be a highly drafted guy.
And Devontae Smith, the guy, the underclassman, is probably going to go in the first round next year. Jalen Waddle's the guy who's going to run in 4.2s.
So what do you do with all of that? I think you want to just be deliberate about what you're doing, because again, you don't want to get caught into the same trap we're talking about with Aaron Donald, where you say, well, Odell Beckham was a success and he had he had worse numbers than Landry in a lot of ways of the market share they had. So therefore, it doesn't matter. But at the same time, there were plenty of guys where that has been a warning sign and they have ended up busting. So I think for that side, the fact that the wide receiver group is seen as being so strong this year, whereas some of the guys at the top I mean, not Lamb. Lamb is probably seen as being that strong, but some of the guys at the top, maybe from a metric standpoint, there's a little bit more risk, I think, that's in there than people are thinking about right now.
We really appreciate you having you on, Kev. We're going to have to do this more and more, especially with that now that you're with PFF. We're going to have to get you on the podcast, 2-for-1 drafts. But where can people see your work in addition to PFF.com? Where can they follow you?
They can follow me on Twitter, Kevin Cole PFF. That's about it.
Are you changing the handle to Worm anytime soon? Or
PFF_Worm.
PFF_Worm. You heard it here first. Well, thanks again, Kev.
All right, thank you.
All right, we have Danny Kelly of the Ringer on 2-for-1 drafts with us now. Really appreciate you coming on. How's this week been for you so far here in Indy?
It's been good, really good. Just taking it all in. Just went and saw some of the running backs, some of the top running backs in the class, so that was cool to kind of get to see them in person. Jonathan Taylor actually just looked way bigger than I was expecting. I think
he's going to run fast,
he's built,
too.
Man. He weighed in, I think, at 226, and I think he was listed under 220, so that's a good weight, and I think he's going to run really fast, too. So I think he's one of the guys. So I have him listed right now as my number 2, which is right behind Dobbins. Mm-hmm. I could see him jump up to number 1, the running back 1 for me. Probably.
I feel like those two you feel really safe about.
Yeah,
zones, like the offensive scheme they're in, size, weight, speed.
Yeah,
that tends to work out when you're that good already.
Yeah.
I mean, both those guys. Yeah,
razor's edge between both of those guys for me. I mean, they're a little bit different style, but they both have that wiggle. I think Taylor's feet are just amazing. Like the way he can kind of skitter through the line and find opening there. I think he's really good. And then obviously they both have that home run hitting ability. So yeah.
When you come out to the combine, obviously you do a ton of work for the Ringer on the NFL draft. What are you hoping? Like, what information are you hoping to gain from this experience?
I mean, honestly, a lot of it is talking to you guys and trying to pick people's brains about what the players they really like, why they don't like certain players. I know you're going to bring up a guy later that we're going to talk about. I love kind of doing that kind of thing. Obviously, talking to the players is a big part of it too. But I just like to be able to pick people's brains and kind of
Well, let's get into the players then.
Yeah.
Let's get into this. All right, so because the most interesting thing to me, going through your top 50, and if you haven't checked out Danny's top 50, it's on the NFL draft.theringer.com. It's incredible, the layout of this board. Like, this is the most beautiful top 50 in terms of just visually I've ever seen. Maybe not the players, the way he's ranked them might not be the most beautiful. But we're getting into that right now.
Yeah.
Edge class. A lot of people are down on this edge class. Mm-hmm. After Chase Young, there are question marks, serious question marks.
Right.
You seem to have ranked them fairly highly. You have 4 guys in your top 25 on the edge position: Chase Young, Caleb Chason, AJ Epinesa, Yetur Gross-Matos, in that order. Kind of talk to me, break down the edge class kind of for us and why you like Caleb Chason and Yetur Gross-Matos so much, because they're not in our top 25 at the moment.
Yeah, so obviously I think I'm going to guess that Chason's probably not high for you guys because of his lack of production. I know I saw that you had his pass rush win rate or his pressure rate or whatever. It was definitely not where you want it to be for a top 10 guy, or top even first round guy, obviously. I don't know. To me, watching him, the way that he moves, the way he's explosive, I think you're projecting what he's going to be, not what he is right now. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so for me, it's the way he moves, the explosiveness, the bendiness. Really kind of reminds me of Brian Burns, honestly. I comped him to Josh Allen, to Neil Hunter. But just the movement skills, he's a little bit different size, but just the way he moves, explosion, that's what really reminded me of him. So for me, that's kind of what it is. I think obviously it's a bit of a risk because some guys will just go on to the NFL and never learn how to produce, never learn how to finish. Mm-hmm. But for me, I think he has the physical attributes to develop and to be coached into, a very, very good explosive pass rusher. So that's why I really like him. I think you could probably say the same. Well, Epinesa, to me, he's just so powerful. The power that he has in his hands, the way that he can kind of shock guys in front of him. There's sort of a Justin Smith element to him. He's not obviously not the same player. He's really tall, 6'6" or whatever. But yeah, just the way he plays with power, I think, is what makes him interesting. He's not super explosive, not super twitched up, but just really, really tough, physical kind of guy. So he's a very different style of edge rusher, or he might even be on the inside sometimes in the pros. But I just really, I liked his game for that, just the power element of it. I think Gross-Matos is pretty much the same as Chason in terms of, I just think, the physical attributes. And you could actually lump Terrell Lewis in there, I think, as well, just because, he comes into the draft having only played one real season basically at Alabama. But again, those guys they're long, they're athletic, And I think the traits there are what are really interesting. I do agree with you, though. This pass rush group is interesting because a lot of it is traits-based. Like Chase Young is absolute stud.
Yeah.
And the production matches everything. But for the other guys, it's more just like a projection. Like these guys are going to be – you have to kind of think about what they can be when they get, into an NFL team with NFL coaching and, NFL weight room and all that, and just – kind of just projecting what they can be. I think that's, the chasing thing again, that's why I kind of comped him to Hunter, is because Hunter came into the NFL with, lower than expected, I think, production, but kind of turned into this, to the freakish pass rusher they is. So that's kind of like what I was thinking about when I looked at him.
Weak edge class, people sort of universally agree. Does that mean that these guys will fall to the back, like that they'll go later? Like we'll see these guys kind of in the 20s at day 2, kind of like the cornerback class was last year in terms of we didn't see a guy come off the board till, pick 31,
right.
DeAndre Baker? Or will it be like everyone still needs pass rush? We got to get these guys early if I want an edge defender in this class.
I think some of it has to do with free agency, because I think this free agent class has some good pass rushers. But
until they get tagged.
Until
they get tagged. Get tagged,
yeah. True. But yeah, I think it's definitely very interesting. I think because you look at like the receiver class is so deep, teams might be like, well, we can get a receiver later.
Yeah.
We can't get a edge guy later. That's going to be like an impact guy early on. So it's very difficult to predict. I would guess these guys might fall into like the late first, early second, and that'd be kind of like their sweet spot to grab a higher upside edge guy.
And going back to what you said, I think I agree with you 100%. After Chase Young, I mean, there isn't this like perfect, complete edge defender. AJ Epinesa, I think, is the closest. He's number 2 on PFF's
like NFL
board.
Readiness.
Yeah, NFL readiness for
he
sure.
He can step in and play right
with Kayvon Chaisson, Yetur Gross-Matos, and I think I'm glad you looped in Terrell Lewis. These guys have really good traits, but a lot of it is that looks like Tarzan plays like Jane from a production standpoint, not like this toughness, grit with that expression.
I was gonna say, you're not trying to call an NFL player a pussy.
Exactly. Yeah. Not today. Yeah. But I think some of that though is like trying to project these guys to the next level is hard. But I think there are these traits that you want to buy into. Like what Kayvon Chaisson could be is insane. What Terrell Lewis could be is insane. I think buying into this idea that you want to get this project is important. I have another thing I wanted to bring up on your board here is Jeff Gladney. I'm high on Jeff Gladney. I really do like what Jeff Gladney brings to the table. He's going to run very fast. He's sneaky. Like I think he's flying under the radar as one of these more athletic, fast cornerbacks, and plays really aggressive. Likes what he does. I like what he does after the whistle. He's a junkyard dog in that way, and like talks a lot of trash. I think Gladney going to blow away people in the interview process. Really blow up the combine. You see him as a first-round player. We have him in the top 40 on PFF's board. I really do like Gladney. What do you like about him?
His foot speed is what kind of caught my eye. When I first put it on, I was like, whoa, this guy is very, very twitched up, And I think everything you're saying about how he just plays, he's very, very, confident, very aggressive. He comes down and hits in the run game. Not that that's really what I'm looking for in, first round, but, like, it's nice. It's like a nice bonus,
I'll take it. Cherry on top.
I mean, obviously coverage is by far the most important thing, but, just the foot speed, the way that he can kind of use that foot speed. If he gets beat initially, he can make up, like he has that make-up speed. Really, really just, like, long-levered guy. I think that length helps. And so I was just really, really impressed with him. I thought, of all the corners I watched, he popped off the tape, I think. More than anyone else.
And I feel like you feel more comfortable about a guy who's been thrown at like 1,000 times like Gladney has over the course of his career.
He has a ton of experience.
Like, playing in the Big 12, I think he's been targeted, well over 200 times in his career, which is just I mean, you have a lot of tape on that.
I don't know what it is about TCU, but they got some freakish athletes.
Right?
What's going on?
Blacklock, Rager,
Banagoo. Banagoo from the year before.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy was that broad jump was stupid. 10-yard split was insane. They do have some athletes.
That weight program there was.
And the safeties, the 2 safeties they have now, they're not in this class, but I mean, both those guys have some range. Looking at your board, you're lower on some guys. Lower on some guys that maybe people are gaining some steam. Josh Jones at number 35 on your board, and Laviska Shenault at 37. Right now, they're in PFF's top 20 players. Josh Jones is up on a lot of people's boards right now. What do you see? Let's start with Josh Jones. Why is he not in that kind of that top 30 for you right now?
I think I just kind of got onto him later than everyone else. He wasn't in my initial top 32, and then I watched him at the Senior Bowl. Was obviously very impressed with how he played there, and I sort of just put him into that second level, I
Yeah.
guess when I expanded it to 50, I could definitely see him rising as it goes through, as I get to watch like more of him and compare him to some of the other top guys. But to be truthful, like that's just kind of like the process. Like,
Yeah.
I thought very impressive guy. He could definitely like rise up as we go along.
Dude, that is the thing about being just like having to do me for 250 guys in the draft guide.
Yeah.
You feel like a dick when you're like, hey, I really haven't watched much of this guy. But
Right,
it's like
right,
there's so
right.
many guys.
Just like
to actually get a handle on a guy,
Yeah.
you need a handful of hours. And
there's
only so many hours in the day.
377 guys at the
Yeah.
combine alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's just kind of honestly the process I'm going through is like you discover these guys, you're like, oh, that guy is really good. You know what I mean? And then you start.
And you can't just
patting
throw
them
them all the way up to
I'm not gonna-
14.
It's not
Yeah,
like we're
Burrow.
an NFL GM who we have a whole scouting department to tell us, who and what to watch.
Right.
Talk to us more about your process. I think
Yeah.
I think listeners would be interested, like how you're evaluating prospects. What steps do you take? Film study, how you evaluate these things.
Yeah. So I watch. I mean, obviously, you're watching. At least 4 or 5 games to get kind of like an idea of who this guy is. Then you dig into sort of the background stuff, like do research on obviously his statistics, the recruiting process, how it went through, like how college kind of went through with him. And then you kind of just start to build like a profile of it. But like honestly, for me, the first part is just watching like how they move, their athletic ability. That might be why like I'm so much higher on Chasen than some people. It's honestly
yeah.
just
He
like the
does
way he
move well.
moves.
I mean,
is so
I've seen
explosive.
some people say the guy's got like a jetpack on. I mean, they got when
Yeah.
his burst and his explosiveness at the snap. I think I'm higher on Caleb on a little bit more than you. I mean, I really do like what he brings to the table. His high end is very good, and I think he's not this just a project guy. I think he's still raw, but I do think you see some of these reps. You're like, okay, like he has put it together before.
Yeah.
It's still inconsistent. It still needs to get a lot better, but like it's not like so. No one's making the comparison to Arden Key for good reason because Arden Key was way more raw and
Well, Arden's off-field was
off-field too.
disastrous.
Off-field was a disaster, but like this guy's not that level from an unpolished standpoint. I think there is a little bit more polish too. I like the Brian Burns conversation. I think him and Brian Burns are similar.
I think because I was a lot higher on Brian Burns than a lot of people last season, and so it was very cool to see him have some success this season. Obviously, he kind of like faded off as the second half of the
He
year.
broke his hand and then never really came back.
And they switched sides with him.
Yeah, he was
switched.
going up against right tackles, and then he was killing them, and then they'd ask him to go left tackles, and it didn't happen. So.
But if you ask PFF, the difference between Brian Burns and Caleb Chase, Brian Burns produced.
Pretty
The
good.
dude had some. The dude had some pass rushing production.
For sure.
2 years of it. Even. All right, let's move. I mentioned LaVisca.
I was saying I want to get into the wide receiver class as a whole.
Okay.
You got Visca kind of low. You have CD over Judy. But I love that you have them right next to each other because that's like if you have.
I mean,
if you
it's
have
like
them,
1A
every
and
board
1B.
has to have them right
Yeah.
next to each other. That's a must. And then you have Brian Edwards, the South Carolina guy,
Yeah.
in your top 50.
I saw you had him ranked like 140 something, right?
Yeah,
So,
not high.
I really liked his
Fourth,
tape,
fifth.
honestly. Like he was a guy that popped on tape for me, and it was the same sort of deal like what we were just talking about, like his movement skills off the line of scrimmage, the way he can kind of shake guys off the line of scrimmage. I thought that was impressive. Just the way he, what he can do inside his routes. Obviously, he had some impressive catches, so like he can make those impressive catches. But yeah, I mean, like digging in more, like you were saying, I think half of his receptions last season were on screen, so that's obviously a red flag. I think people are all over the board with Edwards, honestly. And it sucks that he's not testing this week because.
And he didn't play at the Senior Bowl. I mean, like that's been unfortunate for him. It's really unfortunate.
Senior Bowl could have been huge.
Another guy too, Ashton Davis. I mean, in similar vein, like didn't get a chance to participate in the Senior Bowl. Will not be testing here at the Combine. Like that guy had to kind of put himself in the first round, or Brian Edwards who put himself up in stock. Like those two misses are bad for both players.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like honestly, I could end up being way higher on him than the NFL is. Like I was a lot higher on Kelvin Harmon last season than a lot of people. I just think like those big-bodied guys, for whatever the way that they
Get
can
off
move.
the line.
Yeah. So like, I'm absolutely sort of aware of the fact that this might just be like I'm way too high on this guy. But at the same time, I heard like Daniel Jeremiah was talking about it the other day. If he ran in like under the 4.6s, like he could go in the second or third round.
Oh wow.
So it's just going to be very interesting. I will not be surprised if he falls, though, just because of all these pre-draft kind of things that are happening to him. He broke his foot, so he's not going to be able to test. He's not going to be able to kind of show off and be in the front of people's minds. I think, and he could end up falling a little bit. But overall, honestly, I like him. He's produced 4 seasons.
He was like as a freshman.
Yeah, he was
17-year-old,
coming into South Carolina, and even when Deebo Samuel was in that same offense with him, his numbers were pretty strong, even though he's like 3 years younger than Deebo. So like his profile, his statistical profile is strong.
Yeah.
I thought his tape, like honestly, when I popped on the tape, I thought he looked really good. And so there's definitely some games where, he wasn't quite as like front and center, I think, as you want him to be. But then there's other games too where he was just like, wow, this guy is kind of dominating. So yeah, he's a polarizing guy for sure. I'm absolutely aware of that. And putting him in my top 50, I was like, this is probably going to be
play.
the one.
Yeah, that's a play right there. All
Yeah.
right. Let me let's get that CD Judy conversation though.
Sure.
What's the separator? You have CD above Judy. I said the separator for me going Judy above CD was the speed, and that's gonna play, even if it's not necessarily like it's just off the rip. If you have a guy running a 4.3, defense have to adjust for that. But CD's not going to run the 4.3s, and that's why I have it. But why CD over Judy? And I'm not going to say it's wrong. There's reasons to have either.
So a couple of things. Number one, the contested catch ability for CD I thought was very, very impressive. Like his physicality, even though he's like skinny, like people are talking about his BMI right now and worried that he's too skinny, whatever, he's not solid enough.
We're talking about Austin's BMI too.
Whoa, hey. In a very good light. They're like, oh my God, is that DK Metcalf? I had my shirt off earlier this morning, and people are asking me for interviews and autographs. It's like, wow.
That was you in the mirror, man. Can I interview you? Yeah.
But yeah, so like that. So that's the first thing that stood out for me, and then obviously his yards after the catch ability, like just his playmaking, I think, was really what stood out to me. But again, it's 9 and 10, and like they're like.
No, I know. I just wanted to know, like,
if I had to switch him, it wouldn't be like a big deal to me because I think I agree with you. Like he has his feet are fire. Judy, I'm talking about Judy,
absolute fi. We're trying to make fi a thing. If you could jump on board,
that's a podcast.
It'd be huge for us, actually. Yeah.
All right, good to know. But yeah, so I love both of those guys. I think they'll both be really good.
Bring me back to Laviska and where you see
37th on your board.
So, like, this is a lot of it is off of watching like 2019 tape, and I know that his 2018 tape is better, or at least his production is. But like a couple of things, the injuries thing worries me. The way that he plays is potentially worrisome, and the fact that he's just like very, very physical. Obviously,
reckless. Reckless has a negative connotation, but he does bring the heat on every play.
Yeah, he's not. He's not doing the Marvin Harrison where he drops down.
Yeah. This guy's lowering his shoulder trying to make some plays.
And I think. He, relative to some of the other guys in the class, I think that he has to land in a spot where an NFL coach is willing to kind of like use him to his skill set. So like if he landed in San Francisco, this guy could end up being the best receiver in this whole class, at least production-wise, just because he's such a freak after the catch. Like he's very, very fast. He can get down the field. He's very, very fast down the field. So yeah, I'm not like low on him. I think relative to a lot of people, I'm a little bit lower on him, but it's not like I don't like him. I definitely wouldn't put it that way, but I just think those factors are a little bit worrisome to me. I don't think he, at least on tape to me, he didn't look like a jitterbug fast in the short area. Like he's powerful and fast, but he's not quick, if that makes any sense. Or he's like relatively.
He's not like KJ Hamler.
Right, exactly. He's not like shaking guys and like getting by him. He's like a run fast, physical. He's almost like a running back,
Exactly.
Oh yeah, I mean, Mike Renner's confident.
Saquon. Yeah, there you go.
Saquon Barkley.
I was gonna say, bringing up the comps. I love in the guide here the comps that you like have a guy, but then you're like a supersized Deebo Samuel. Like because
add a modifier.
Because I feel like a lot of times I want to do that, but then I'm like everyone's gonna be like, oh, he's so much bigger. Why? Like, it's like no, but like they remind. It's not. That's like the definition of comp is kind of like get who he reminds you of, who like his skill set is like.
Right.
And say like a bigger guy like that, a bigger version of Deebo Samuel is very much more accurate than trying to.
Find an exact
exactly. Trying to find a guy who fits every single part of the position.
I feel like I started with Cordarrelle Patterson, and I was like, that's just not. No, I mean, there's not the same. They're not the same kind of guy. Like physically, they're similar size, I guess, but
it
just wasn't the same style, I guess. And so, he's running the 40 this week, right?
I think with Laviska too. I don't know if you know. We talked to him earlier in the season. He said injuries were the biggest reason why his usage was like almost exclusively outside receiver. He was saying, in 2018 they used me in running back, quarterback, slot, all these things, and like he said, that's the role I want to play in the NFL. But in an effort to kind of pull him back from the injuries, trying to avoid some of that harm that we spoke to, they're like, let's play him outside.
Like, don't get him hit between the tackles by a DT.
Exactly. But here we go. I mean, those concerns, I think Mike and I have the same concerns. Like, I think we have the same concerns with Laviska in terms of the injuries are a legit issue. Like guys had 3 or 4 surgeries in the last the last 18 months. And in addition to that, usage is so important with Laviska Shenault. Like you're not going to be able to play him exclusively at outside receiver. You have to get creative and prioritize him in your game plan if you're going to get that production out of him.
I would say that brings up kind of an interesting point or a good topic conversation for the draft in general of like we're all seeing the same stuff. it's like, what do you value?
Yeah,
about that
totally.
position?
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
it's like we all see the same tape unless you're like really actually don't know what the hell you're looking at and bad at, like you don't know football at all.
Right.
But like we're all seeing the same stuff. It's like,
You
what
don't have
do
to
actually
subtweet me. Okay.
value? But yeah, that is kind of just like an interesting part of the draft eval that kind of gets lost when someone's like higher or lower. It's like, no, you kind of it's because you value it.
And to jump on that, I mean, that's why it's so valuable the work that Eric Eager, George Chahuri, Kev Cole are doing in terms of like trying to find with all this stuff that we watch and see and collect. It's like what's actually valuable, what translates to the next level, what has predictive power, and I think that's really important. And as we get better in this process, it's so much. I think we're moving forward, and even we had Kevin Cole on earlier. Like he's saying, teams are getting smarter, and I think it's for the reasons that you're trying to understand now. It's like what's valuable, what should we be looking for, and things like that. To wrap it up here, who are some guys here that you're looking forward to blow up the combine? Some predicted winners. They don't run until Thursday.
Yeah.
They'll run through the weekend. But who do you think is going to be like a predicted winner at
like
the combine?
a guy you like too that you think is like gonna have a good week too.
Right.
Yeah.
I really like Rager, Jalen Rager.
Okay.
I think he's going to be super fast and super explosive. Like, you know, obviously everyone talks about the 40, but he's also probably going to jump really well, do the broad jump really well. He's just an explosive guy. I just wrote about this, and I'm like blanking on everyone, so I'm going to pull it up.
You got Wirfs at 6. Is your
Oh,
top tight end? Or Jesus, top
tight end,
tackle.
yeah. He could play tight
He
end.
could probably.
Same
But he's your top
deal. Like
tackle.
he's just super athletic. I think his fit will be important if he's like with a team like a wide zone team. I think that would be great.
Yeah. He's so good at that.
You know, I like a lot of these tackles
So
actually.
patient.
The tackle
class is good, very good. I think five guys probably go in the top 20. Mike, you said that. I think that's fair. I think all 5 of those top guys are great.
I was gonna say I think I was on Cleveland radio yesterday, and I was just like, they can't fuck this up. You know, like the Browns can't mess this up. Like you're gonna get a good tackle there. Like one of those guys will be good.
Let's see here. Oh, Michigan's Donovan Peoples-Jones is kind of interesting this week because
we're DPJ haters, noted.
Yeah, I
that's
didn't.
That's our.
Is that your?
We just
your,
no. I hate Michigan guys in
brand?
general, but then
this is
but
so
then
we're trying to make Phi
a
a thing, and now we're making DPJ a thing. DPJ haters a thing, but we're not big fans.
Sounds like you got to pay extra for that.
It's tough with guys that are like Donovan Peoples-Jones, Caleb Von Chason. Obviously, not in the same tier of players on our board, but these guys are very athletic. We know they're going to test well, but the production wasn't there. I mean, those concerns with PFF are bigger than I think for others because we look at production so much more than others, and not box score production, not tackles, but like actual advanced production
and like you
pass
guys,
rushing grades and stuff like that.
And I respect that a lot because you guys are looking at the stats that you found correlate to
exactly.
the NFL.
It's not like, oh man,
we
made up this stat. It's called
we have to use it now.
Snaps played per coverage, whatever. It's like no, like this stat translates more often than even pass rating, touchdown, all these things. And it's like that's why we buy into.
And
I
absolutely take that into account. Like as I'm doing this, like breakout age is a thing for receivers. I think that is important. It's not everything, but it's important. The dominator rating.
I think that's kind of every
position
position too. Is like if you're good as freshman or good as like a true sophomore,
that means you're good.
That helps. Yeah, like when you're beating up guys older than you,
it means you're a good player. Yeah.
And we finished. No, but with Jalen Rager, I wanted to bring up. I think. Weighed in at like 206 pounds. If this guy runs in the 4.2s like he says he can at 206 pounds, like what is going on? Like that's not a human being. That's going to be because like you think about Henry Ruggs, he wants to run like a 4.19 or whatever it is. Like he's 188 pounds.
I do too. I want to run a 4.19.
Same, but like he's 188 pounds. Jalen Rager is going to be 20 pounds heavier, and he's going to run close. I don't think he beats him, but he's going to run close. And like Jalen Rager, there's going to be some teams that fall in love with this kid if they haven't already.
I mean, if you look around the NFL, and I felt like I noticed this during the season, a lot of the best offenses are just fast. You know what I mean? Obviously, Kansas City is the poster child for that. Just having that speed makes you so difficult to match up. And it's not even so like Rager could come into the NFL or Ruggs especially, and he's not necessarily going to be like a big fantasy star, but he's important because he changes the way that you have to like defend the team. He takes another safety out of the box, et cetera, et cetera. Like it changes the way that defenses have to play. And so like I think that is important. As the NFL is becoming like more, spread out, teams are trying to spread the field. Teams are trying to get one-on-one matchups. These guys might not be huge producers, but they are important.
I was gonna say when I think it's like you said the way the NFL has gone in terms of the third wide receivers on the field every snap.
Right.
You go 4 wide, like you have that guy is now a starter, and that guy should be fast. That guy, instead of being your slot shifty underneath guy, the ability to test down the field and the increase in teams using play action.
That's why
I
think a team's going to really like KJ Hamler. I mean, KJ Hamler's got you're going to stretch the field from the slot. You can he's going to be a weapon there. I think very impressive. Well, Danny, I really appreciate you coming on. We have to get you on the podcast again as we get closer to the draft and do different things. But really appreciate what you've done. Phi, remember it, just hold it to you. And there we go. But thanks again.
All right, thank you guys.
You want to get rid of me and get back to more great PFF YouTube content? All you have to do is push that button right there and subscribe. Thanks for watching.